Hello, and welcome to our podcast on the semicolon. No, it is not a comma. No, it is not a colon. It is a semicolon. And that's that piece of punctuation that has the little dot on top and a comma directly beneath it. That is a piece of punctuation. So let's go ahead and get going and see some of the rules that surround the semicolon. All right, so the first one is that we can use a semicolon to join two independent clauses. Now, in grammar, an independent clause is a fancy word or word pair for complete sentence, meaning that it could stand on its own. It has all of the elements of a sentence: subject, verb, complete thought, and capital letters and punctuation. So if for some reason we wanted to join two independent clauses together, we would go ahead and do that by placing a semicolon between the two clauses. For example, Jane starts a new job today. She is very excited. Now, each half of that sentence, to the left or to the right of the semicolon, could stand on its own. You could say, Jane starts a new job today, period. And then a new sentence. She is very excited. Grammatically, those are fine, but perhaps stylistically you wanted to keep the pace going, you wanted to put them together, and that's fine. One way you can do that is by putting a semicolon between the two clauses. Jane starts a new job today, semicolon. She is very excited. Now we have two sentences becoming one with a semicolon between the two independent clauses. To take that same idea but add a little bit to it, we can go ahead and use the semicolon to join two independent clauses with what we call a conjunctive adverb. So again, we're just combining two sentences, but the second one adds a little bit of a transition to it. Or in this case, the specific term is a conjunctive adverb, meaning it is joining and it is describing kind of how or when the verb in the second is going to happen. For example, Martha is interested in taking the class. However, it does not suit her schedule. Again, to the left of the semicolon, that could stand on its own. Martha is interested in taking the class, period. And then to the right of the semicolon, we could write, however, comma, it does not suit her schedule. Both of those halves could stand on their own. They are both independent clauses. But for whatever reason, stylistically or whatever, we want to join them into one sentence. That's totally doable. The best way for us to do that in this case is to add a semicolon between those two clauses. So, Martha is interested in taking the class, semicolon, however, it does not suit her schedule. Notice that we do not capitalize however, because it's no longer the starter of its own sentence. It's in the middle of our new sentence. We've taken two complete sentences and joined them together by using a semicolon. Another pretty common use of the semicolon is in what we call items in a series. This is when we have three or more items that are in a series, in a row. They all belong to something. But what makes these series call for a semicolon rather than just a comma is when each item already has commas in it. So if we just put a comma between each item again, it would be very confusing because we wouldn't know which item is grouped together and which is the break to a new item. So for example, the art museum contained some fragile, old oil paintings, bronze, plaster, and marble statues, and recently completed modern art pieces. So we do have three items here. We have paintings, statues, and art pieces. Now within each of those items, there are commas being used to further describe them. So it would not be a good idea to use a comma to separate those three items. In this case, you're going to go ahead and use a semicolon to keep those three items separate. So now the first item is fragile old oil paintings, semicolon, bronze, plaster, and marble statues, semicolon, and recently completed modern art pieces. So now we still have our three items, but we're able to keep them a lot more clearly separated because we're using the semicolon rather than just the comma. So here we go. We have a little bit of practice for you. Go ahead and read each sentence, pause the podcast, and see if you can place the semicolon in the appropriate place. and the answers will follow on the next slide. So that's about it for the semicolon. We really only want to talk about 3 uses for them, and 2 of those 3 are kind of similar to each other, but again, they are somewhat different. So again, just to review, we use the semicolon to separate 2 independent clauses, or complete sentences, that have been joined together to make one big sentence. We can also use them to separate 2 independent clauses if the second one is using an adverb as a piece of transition. So as in, however, or therefore, something like that. And then we also use the semicolon when we are separating items in a series and those items already have commas within them. We want to use that semicolon to keep those 3 items or 4 or whatever clear and distinct, and to help our reader understand how many items we have and which is description. As always, if you have any questions, please go ahead and bring those in, and we will see you in class soon. Thanks very much.